Christina. How are you doing today?
Good. I'm so good. I'm like trying to learn to use words other than like I'm fine, I'm good. So
Yeah,
that's part of my recovery. So I will say today I am peaceful.
that's
Yeah.
great. That's
Yeah.
great. Today I'll do the same thing then. Today I am excited.
Oh, I love it.
I'm
Yeah.
very excited.
It's like it's just interesting just to stay on that real quick because like people I think a lot of times we just like go through like how are we and you don't like sit in your body
Yeah,
and like breathe and like how do you feel? So just been trying to do that.
that's great. That's a good thing. Yeah. Yeah. There's also like time and place because I've also been at like the grocery store and sometimes I feel bad for the clerks when they're like, "How are you doing?" And they're like, "What?"
Well,
Yeah,
why
and they're like, "Fuck." Like, shit.
why did I ask her?
I know, totally. But I really do appreciate that idea of using other words other than fine.
Right.
Because fine is so loaded.
Yeah,
Fine means like not really fine.
yeah,
Or it could mean
yeah,
like decent. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I truly appreciate that. So, Christina, you already mentioned recovery, but for folks who aren't sure who you are, your story, do you
Yeah.
mind telling us a little bit about how you came to be here?
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. I'm just so
Yes.
always honored and grateful.
Ah,
But yeah, so I am a micro influencer and a blogger, and I share about my mental health and recovery from alcoholism.
mhm.
And I do it for a few reasons to educate people. I just feel like it's like an under talked about and like misunderstood diagnosis, mental illness, and alcoholism. And then to end the stigma, there's just from we'll get into it, but I found there was like a huge stigma around both. And then to provide hope to others that are maybe struggling. So that's
Yeah.
me in a nutshell.
Yeah, you can find Christina's like Instagram and something this is top of mind because the Dr. Jen episode talking about
Yeah,
BS vulnerability just
right.
launched, but you
Listen to that.
truly talk about it in an authentic way. Like it's for sure you. It's
It is.
it
Yeah.
yeah, it
Yeah.
that completely comes off and I really appreciate that. So, do you mind bringing us back to like square one really about
Yeah.
kind of going into recovery and dealing with alcoholism?
Yeah, absolutely. So I just hit a year sober February 3rd of this year. Thank
Congratulations.
you. Yeah, it's like literally the thing I'm the most proud of, like hands down. It was just the hardest thing I've ever done, for sure.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, that is so cool. That is
Thank
so cool.
you. Yeah. So so last January 2020, I just like hit a personal low. I had gotten a new job. I went to that job drunk. And I'd never done that before.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
went on like a 2-day binge. I just did like a lot. I stayed drunk for like 2 days and I just was like, oh my goodness. Like my husband, married and he was like, this is, I don't like, you need help. You know what I mean? Like beyond what you're doing. Like we need to figure this out.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of threw my hands up and I was like, okay, I am done. Um, and so I decided to move home to my hometown. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. But my husband's in the Navy, so we live in Virginia. And so I left him, not legally. I say separated. I need to come up with a better term, but like I left to get
Yeah.
sober.
Yeah.
And we're still married and all the things. And I just lived at home for like a year, like 10 months, and just worked on healing some deep seated trauma that I'd had from childhood, like all the things, and one step in front of the other and got sober. So crazy. For
Congratulations.
10 years. Yeah. I was like, I was a weirdo. I didn't start drinking. It's weird until I was like 21, 20. I know a lot of people like, I just didn't have that experience. I grew up in like a strict home. So no
Yep.
alcohol.
Yep.
I drank in college, but like not as heavily. Anyway, my addiction progressed as I got into my 20s.
Oh, okay, so college you weren't like super
Yeah, weird, right? I know.
how do, do you know how that progressed? Was
Yeah.
there when you were in your 20s?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I went to a small private like Christian college. So we just really didn't drink. I mean, we
Oh,
did.
okay.
And when we did, I was the one puking or blacking out.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
in hindsight, I'm like, yeah, I had a problem. But Yeah, so it progressed for me probably like the last 3 years. I'm 32 now. And so
Mhm.
like the end of my 20s, early 30s was when it was like its worst.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, I started, my husband, like, I don't know if I mentioned he's in the military, and we
Mhm.
met, and I moved with him to Florida, and like that was just a big drinking culture because it's the beach, we're in our 20s, military, all the things.
Absolutely. It's something that I really love that you pointed out is that you were vomiting and blacking out, and you're like, that's a problem. Culturally speaking, when you're in college slash in your
Not a
20s,
problem.
it's being fun.
I was gonna say it's funny. Puke and
Yeah.
rally.
Yeah. And then like stories, like it's a badge of honor almost. Like
The crazier, yeah.
I'm guilty of it 100%. Like in college, being like, oh shit, I don't remember anything, and being
And
like,
it's
ha ha
funny.
ha. Yeah. Like it's hilarious, but it's not healthy.
No, girl, it's not. And so yeah, so it's like, and what's sad is that like for me progressed into my 20s, and like, but it was still funny even in my 20s. You know what I mean? Like mid
Yeah.
20s ish.
Yeah. Yeah.
People were still laughing about it. Oh, I'm so hungover at work, like still drunk at work, like not funny. You know what I mean? That's just not funny. And so that is what kept me sick though, because I looked around and honestly, I may have been a little bit worse than everyone, but I really wasn't. You know what I mean? Like I was
Mm.
drinking along the lines like that everyone else was. And so I stayed sick for a very long time because in the back of my mind, I think I knew I had an issue, but I
Yeah.
just like kept pushing it off. And then I eventually, yeah, so I hit that low. But yeah, I mean, I would go to like happy hours and like drink the 2 glasses of wine, like that were socially acceptable, but then stay out till 7 a.m. I don't even know how I worked that out, but I did. Um,
Really? Like, oh,
it takes like
damn.
a true alcoholic to find the bars that are open at 7 a.m. Virginia is also very strict state, right? So like
Mm.
bars are supposed to be open at 7 a.m., but I found them. Yeah, I did. And so yeah. Um and that was like the height of my addiction, right? So that's when I wouldn't come home. Like I'd come home at like 7. I know. I
Wow.
know. Yeah. And
Wow.
so but it wasn't like that. It was like that for about like 6 months for me towards the end. And it just kept getting worse.
Got it. And that's when you were like, okay. What was like the moment? Was it your husband talking to you, or what was the moment where you're like, "Oh, okay, we're doing this sober thing."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, it was like two things. It was my husband. He was so pivotal and so amazing, such a great guy. But he was like, I didn't say I'm gonna leave you, but he's like, I don't recognize you. We've been together
Wow.
7 years. Like, I don't know who you are anymore. And my marriage is like one of the most important things in my life. And so I was like, okay, like I'm gonna get sober for me, but also my marriage. And I want
Yeah.
kids. Do not want to bring them into a household with drunk parents. Like I'm just not doing it.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then I moved in January. I love telling the story because it's funny. Like you kind of have to laugh at yourself in recovery because we do some stupid shit. But anyway, so when I moved home to get sober to Cleveland, Ohio, I moved in with my grandma, and she's one of those strange people that had like 2 drinks in her life and was like, it's not for me. Like got drunk
Yeah,
once,
totally.
don't like it, and I'm done. Like good for you, grandma.
Okay.
But anyway, so good place to move in because she had had a drink in like 40 years. Not even like
Yeah,
just okay.
totally.
Yeah, I love it. No, I mean, so it was good, healthy place to move home to get sober. But anyway, so I thought by moving home and getting away from my bars and like all that stuff, like I would remove the addiction, but like the addiction follows you, like you can't just it doesn't just go away. So I kept drinking
Mm.
when I moved home last January for about a month. And it got
Mm.
so bad that like I made a pact with my brother and my grandma were trying to help me get sober. And they said, because I was drinking and driving, I openly talk about it. Not proud of it, but it's just is what it
Wow.
is. I know. Yeah. And
Y you
so,
know,
yeah, go ahead.
it still happens. It still
Yeah,
happens. It seems like
yeah,
in the age of, like, Uber and stuff, like, it doesn't happen,
it
but
happens all the time.
yeah, I live in a building with a parking garage, and
Okay, yeah.
sometimes on, like, Saturday mornings or whatever, like, Ben my boyfriend pointed it out, but and then I started, like, having an awareness about it, but he's like, "That's a drunk park job." Like, Like, just like,
Mhm.
and I was like, oh shit. Like, I don't know. Just like, I think it's
Totally.
important to recognize that the things that, since if your brain thinks this is not a problem for you, that it's still a problem.
Exactly. Oh, 100%. I mean, it happens all the time. And I open up about it just because it's part of my recovery story. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
like, the more you share, like you love Renee, so we talk
Yeah.
about that, the
Mm.
vulnerability aspect. I know we could like go off on a
I
tangent,
know.
Renee.
100%.
Um, yeah, so and it's not like to shock people. I'm like, "Oh my god." It's just more so to be like, yeah, like this is the insanity of addiction and disease, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, so I was on that. I was drinking and driving and they finally said, like I agreed to this, but they're like, "We're going to take your keys and your debit card because yeah, I mean, I was sneaking. It was awful." And so they did. And so my grandma was taking me to AA. I don't know if you know what Alcoholics Anonymous is, if
Yeah,
you've
yeah,
heard.
yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So I was going to Alcoholics Anonymous and she was driving me there and I would ask her for like just like a few dollars to put in the donation bag or basket. Well, I was hoarding those dollars like a true addict. Yeah. And I know. I asked her to drop me off at like a Panera. I went to Panera for like 10 minutes. Then I walked in the snow to a bar like half a mile away. Yeah. I know, this is my last drink, and so I had, like, $5, bought, like, some shitty Coors Light or who knows, and then I flirted with the guy down the bar to get more drinks. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
addicts, we are, like, real, like, resourceful because people are like, "How did you get drinks?" I'm like, "Oh, there's ways." Like,
Oh, yeah.
like, if you want something, you're gonna get it. Um, and so I was drinking. I only had, like, 3 or 4 drinks, which that's, like, a starting night for an alcoholic, but anyway, my grandma, like, was tracking me on my iPhone because that's another thing, like, they didn't trust me. So she
Oh.
found me at the bar. She walked in, was so nice. She was like, "Hey, do you wanna come home?" And the guy that was sitting next to me was like, "Does she want a drink?" And I was like, "Oh, she does not want a drink. Like, Grandma does not want a drink. We are going home." And I just like at that point, I was just like, I am so done. You know what I mean? Like I'm at a low. I'm at like freaking Applebee's by myself, like, and so
Yeah.
I went home, entered outpatient treatment the next day, and that's it. Crazy.
Wow.
No.
Wow. There are a couple things I want to dig into a little bit more, but
Yeah.
one, with COVID,
Yeah.
alcohol sales have skyrocketed. And how do you think how do you think addiction slash alcoholism is kind of permeating into everyday life
Yeah.
for a lot
Sure.
of folks?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely hit on something so important. I know it's why I feel more passionate about sharing because I got sober during literally one of the world's craziest times.
Yeah.
And it is definitely permeating. And I don't know the statistics. I have been wanting to look those up. But yeah, I mean, it's for women, it's particularly binge drinking is like, I mean, through the roof, right?
Wow.
Just more so, yeah. And so I think it's a couple things. We are meant to be in community. We're meant to be with people.
Yeah.
So loneliness was like already like an epidemic. I don't know if you've heard. I think it's like Vivek Murphy. He was like the Surgeon General or whatever. But like he wrote a whole book before the pandemic on loneliness, right?
Wow.
And we think of loneliness as people who are just like at home, like geriatric, like grandparents. Our generation's lonely, and you can be lonely in a relationship. You can be lonely married. You can be lonely with friends. So there's that
Right.
component, right? The loneliness.
Right.
And I know I drank all the time because I was lonely. That was a huge part of it.
Yes. Yes.
In a new state, my husband was gone a lot being Navy, so it's that was a huge part. Then the other part is boredom, right? Like we can't go out. There's nothing to do. So like that was a huge trigger for me. It was I would get done with the workday and why not pop one open? You know what I mean? And then
Yeah.
the other thing, and this is really hard, but like social media, like I downloaded TikTok like everyone else, during COVID because I was bored. I don't make videos. I'm not that creative enough to do it. But anyway, but like I would see just like moms with wine glasses and like, taking their wines, joking, taking their kids to school. And I'm not here to judge them. That's not my point. It's just that we have normalized, like, like there'll be TikToks of people opening a beer, and doing a Zoom call or being like, oh shit, they found me, like whiskey in a cup. So I think
Yeah.
all of those, right? Like loneliness, boredom, and then normalization and glamorization of drinking, that it's like, well, what
Mm,
else is there? So, I mean, obviously, I'm not a therapist, like, I'm not a researcher, but those would be, and then obviously just stress in general of like money and like if you live in the US, like the racial tensions, all the things, those are all going to cause us to drink. So
yeah.
it's like a perfect shitstorm of like why addiction's on the rise.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, I would love to chat a little bit about Anonymous.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
The folks who I know of who have gone through it, it seems like the methodology could be applied to pretty much anybody for
Hmm.
anything. What are the main key takeaways
Yeah.
that you have from Alcoholics Anonymous?
Yeah, it's so funny you said that because I'm always say so we have these things called sponsors who are basically like a friend, like an accountability partner, like a therapist, whatever you want to call it, and you're supposed to call them every day. I am not perfect at it, but you're supposed to, on a good week, I probably call her like 3 times a week. But anyway,
Okay.
and it's not this long conversation. It's just like, hey, how are you doing? Like, did you checking in? Like, where's your head at? Because we call alcoholism a thinking disease, right? Because
Mm,
it's crazy. It's the only disease that will say you don't have a disease. Like, that's what we say. Like, yeah, it's
wow.
crazy. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Like, now that I'm recovered, I've had thoughts where I'm like, I'm fine. I could have one. And it's like, yeah, I know. Yeah. It's just the
So,
nature of the disease.
but so relatable to pretty much everything else. I
Exactly. I
I
mean, yeah, go ahead.
let's talk about sugar real quick. Like if you're like, "Oh yeah, I did like this I'm not off sugar, whatever." And then all of a sudden you're like, "Well, maybe I could have some Ben and Jerry's. I'll
Yeah,
just have a
then you
little
eat the
bit."
old times or yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
and then it's in your house all the time and then it's just a part of your daily life. So, everyday addictions happen for everybody, and it's just wherever you put your efforts. It could be alcoholism, it could be sugar, it could be being Brene talks about this, being crazy busy is a form
Shopping, I
of
mean,
numbing.
any of
Yes,
it. Watching too much TV, I mean, scrolling on Instagram, all the things, right? I mean,
all of
it's
it.
yeah, I mean, so AA, it's so crazy, is like founded at the early 1900s, but its tenets are so applicable. I mean, because like there's 12 steps, and I don't have them all memorized, but the first one is basically you just admit like you're powerless over alcohol.
Wow.
But insert that with any addiction, shopping, working out, like that's not I mean, that it's just a humbling place to be. And then I actually just did a meeting last night with my sponsor and then a couple other women, and we talked about like step 5, which is like talking about your pain and the things that you've gone through with another person. And
Mm,
it's like it's so funny because I always say that. I'm like, yeah, you can apply these steps to anything in life. I mean, we all have shit in the closet, right? And I was literally, the women in my group don't. I don't know. They're not really aware of Brene, which is fine, But I didn't bring it up. But in this book that we were reading by Alcoholics Anonymous, it talks about like the need to be vulnerable, and it was so crazy.
mm.
It was so crazy, and this was written in the 1900s. So no, like Brene's work has like backed that up research wise, but like it literally talked about how we need to humble ourselves and open up to other alcoholics about our past. And obviously, this is related to what we've done as alcoholics, but I mean, who can't relate to needing to talk to somebody about what you've been through? So, yeah, very, very
Oh
relatable
man.
program.
Yeah, we all have shame. We all have stuff that we
Yeah,
have done that
exactly.
we feel shame about, and for folks who like aren't like super in the up and up of Brene Brown, but shame can't live in the light, and shame feeds off of secrecy.
Mhm.
So this is all from Brene Brown. I'm not speaking these words. I no no no. um, uh, but once you speak it and it's in the light, it can't live anymore. But also you need to receive empathy from another person of being like, me too.
Exactly.
or I totally understand, or,
Exactly. Yes,
um,
exactly. And that's what it talked about, was like the book talks about just like how we can think we're the only ones, like I'm the only one that drove drunk, I'm the only one that did X, I'm the only one, and then you stand in a room of other alcoholics and we all laugh. Or like, I love Alcoholics Anonymous because they're a very hard bunch to like surprise, or like we're like, really,
mm,
that's all you did, like just in a funny way, because we've just seen it and done it all. There's millions of us, you know what I mean? So you can
yeah,
share your most shameful like thing. I shared about going to work drunk or whatever, and they're like, every single person I've ever talked to is like, oh, I've done that, or I've done X, so you're like, oh, wait a minute. Not that it makes it okay. I definitely want to make that distinction. We're not sitting here laughing about it. It's not like it's
yeah.
okay. It's just more so like, yeah, you're not alone. Like, you're not special. Like
That's a
Christine,
fan.
you
That's a
know.
fantastic distinction.
Yeah.
It's it is just saying, "Hey, I'm with you." Not
Yeah.
so much we should break sobriety and do it more. you know?
That was a good time.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I would like to talk about, so steps 1 and 5. Are there any other big steps that speak to
Um,
you?
yeah. So I'm actually on step 9. So there's 12 steps.
Mhm.
I'm on step 9. I think it's the most powerful one. I have taken a while with it because it's the hardest one for me. It's making amends. So you make
Mm.
a list of all the people that you've harmed through your drinking. And yeah, I know. And I started doing it and I was like, oh, I probably have a few. And then the list got longer and I was like, oh boy, like,
Yeah.
like, okay, and so like my sponsor recommends like you don't do it all in one day, you know what I mean? Because that's like exhausting. So I've taken it piece by piece, like I started with my husband and then my grandma and just family and then that employer, and um it's the most like humbling and beautiful step ever.
Wow.
So yeah,
Wow. That leads perfectly into the next topic I wanna talk about,
sure.
is having difficult conversations with loved
Mm.
ones.
Mhm.
You mentioned, when we were chatting on the phone a couple weeks ago, that when you became sober,
Yeah.
your friends didn't know how to hang out with you,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
and you were left out. Do you mind
Yeah,
sharing?
absolutely. I mean, yeah, it was interesting. I had like a mixture of like, responses. I think mostly people were good, like fine. I think the big thing was people, yeah, like didn't know what to do, or like didn't know if they could invite me places, and so they just like wouldn't. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah.
And I'm always like, I enjoy food. Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, pretty sure everywhere you're going to go has food or mixed drinks or whatever. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, like, just a couple instances I can think of would be like where they would get together, or one would, and just not think to invite me. And I would not call it out. I hate that. That sounds mean, but like just kind of bring it up. I'm like, I'd rather talk about this because I want to continue our friendship. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
because a lot this friendship in particular, we had drank all the time, but I was like, I can still go places, like, and I'd rather, it hurts that you're just not going to say anything. You know what I mean? Like, and just kind of let it
Right. And I completely understand where they're coming from. It could, because on both ends, for you and your friend,
go. Yeah.
social anxiety.
Oh my gosh. I
You're like,
know.
oh my God, this is gonna be uncomfortable,
Right.
because your friend is probably thinking,
Can I drink?
I,
Can I not? Yeah.
yeah, and what do I do? I feel so weird right now. I'm
Right.
just gonna not talk to
Say anything.
Christina.
Right.
And likewise for you, you're feeling hurt. And
Right.
what I love is that you chose, there are two things that you could do, probably several things you could do, but you could be all fuck that person, they're not a real
Right.
friend anymore. But you just opened your arms up and like went to them with love and
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
courage. Do you mind talking about how that kind of like processes through you
Yeah.
when you to make that, because that's a hard decision to make.
Yeah, for sure. I think, I mean, part of it is that I didn't want to lose that friendship. You know what I mean? It was
Yeah.
someone I'd been friends with since like childhood, actually. And it was a friend of, my husband and I, one of the, it's just a good friend. And so I value that, and I value like honesty and vulnerability. And if, it goes back to what we were talking about, but like I try to live that way on Instagram. You know what I mean? Like I want to be that way in my real life. Like I really, really try. Not that I'm perfect. And so it was that, yeah, it was like, okay, well, I'm going to make myself vulnerable here and say like, it hurt that you did X, or it hurt that you know, and so when I opened the door for that, that conversation, it was great. And it was fine. It was so funny. It wasn't even a big deal. You know what I mean? The person was like, oh, I mean, cool. Like, you want to go out? And I was like, yeah, I mean, again, I like food. Like,
Yeah.
there's like tons of stuff that we can do that doesn't involve alcohol. And also, if you want to have a drink, I'm totally cool with it. You know what I mean? I mean, like, I don't want to be around drunk people. That's not preferable. I don't know who does when you're sober. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No,
But
it's never
it's
fun.
never fun. Yeah. And so, but I was like, yeah, I mean, I don't care if you want a drink or two. And we resolved it and it was totally fine. This friend came and stayed with us. Like, we all went out, and like this friend didn't even drink when they were
Wow.
with us. And I was like, I don't care if you do, like, truly, no problem. Not triggering for me. I've been sober for a year. Like, no. And they didn't. Like, it wasn't a big deal. We went to a brewery actually, and like, it was cool. They had a coffee shop there, which we need more of. But and we just like
Yeah.
got some coffee, smoothies, like, some pastries, and called it a day. So it's just funny. I think we hype things up in our mind, like, I'll speak for myself, or make it worse than it is, and then you like have a conversation and both of you are like, oh, this really isn't a big deal. So
Yeah. So what are some things that folks have had wrong about you? And the
yeah.
reason why I want to ask that is in case someone else listening isn't sure what to think about their friend who may have
Mhm,
be going through something. Not to say that everyone's story is the same, but
mhm.
what have your loved ones, friends, what do people get wrong about you?
Yeah, I love that. I think a big one is just being sober now. I think a lot of people think that I can't be around alcohol, like that it's a
Mhm.
trigger that, like, even if I see it, I'm gonna relapse, and so,
Mhm.
and I'm not angry about it. I get it. Look, we're all walking in it's new waters. Like, it's a lot to navigate.
Yeah.
And even I'm figuring out what's triggers. I would think that, and I think people think I'm just like also, I try really hard not to do this, but like anti-alcohol. So like not only just like um for myself, but like in general, I think people think I'm more against drinking in general, which I'm totally not. I try to come out and say that as much as I can. I'm not anti-alcohol. I'm anti like big alcohol that like markets it to us, right? Like the day drinking, the
Mm.
unhealthy, like that. But I no, I'm totally not so yeah, those two things, that I'm anti-alcohol, and that, I can't be in situations where there's alcohol present.
Got it. Cool. So let's talk about sharing your story.
Yeah.
So what prompted you to publicly start sharing your story?
Yeah, I'll take you back a couple years because I that's where it really started. It was like maybe 5 years ago, but I started sharing my mental health story first.
Mm.
Um, and it was like 5 years ago, I hospitalized myself for a panic attack and some suicidal ideation.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'd never experienced either of those. Like, this was just scary. It was like brand new, this was just a new experience. And I had gone through a lot. My husband was deployed. I had lost a job. Like, just a lot of things happened. I moved, sometimes life happens like that, a confluence of like a shitstorm. you know,
100%. Yes. Yes.
life just happens, and I didn't have the tools to cope, and so I hospitalized myself because I felt like that was the best, safest route to go, and I'm glad I did. Um, so I was there for about 3 days in a psych ward, and I didn't tell anyone. My mom knew and my grandma knew, but like nobody else knew. And all
Mhm.
my friends were like, "Where did you go?" Like, because you can't have your phone, you don't have access to anything. I mean, you have a
Mm.
phone there that you can call people. Like, I also want to like let people know it's not like a dungeon. I hate media representations of um, like the psych ward or whatever, because everybody like think it's like padded walls with straps. I'm like, it literally looks like a hospital. Anyway, I mean, it's a hospital, so it's not scary. It's not an asylum, but anyway,
Yeah.
so. I just like to put that out there because I think a lot of people get nervous to like, because
Yeah.
people
Thank
could
you.
visit you, and I'm like, yeah, like, yeah, like,
Yeah.
we're all walking around like it was fun. I mean, yes, there are people there with schizophrenia or who, yes, are dealing with scarier symptoms, but people are not running around banging their heads on walls. Like it's no one's yelling. Like it's pretty chill actually. Like people are in pajamas, playing cards, like kind of like a nursing home actually.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that, because
Yeah.
when I think of mental hospitals,
Mhm.
I think about the movie Shutter Island,
Yeah.
and that's pretty
I'm not
much
making a face at you. It's just like, no, it's not like that. And I've been hospitalized twice. I've hospitalized myself overnight twice for mental health, for suicidal ideation. And no, I've never once had an experience. And I've stayed at them like twice for a couple days, like never saw one scary thing. Like it's just not like that. Does it happen? Sure. Like I can't say that of course there's scary incidences where someone may need restraint or that is so like the outlier though. You know what I mean? Like it's just not.
Mhm.
It's anyway. So yeah, so I didn't tell anyone because of that, like things like that,
Right.
like misperceptions. And I got out and I was like, "Oh my god, like I can't tell anyone about this." Like that was internalized.
Right.
Um but I was like, if I had
Right.
broken my leg or something, someone would brought me balloons and like flowers and cards, whereas like, and I was like, wait, but I was in the hospital and I didn't want to tell anyone. And then so I started opening up and people would just like one of two things. They wouldn't address it or they would get real awkward. And so
Yeah.
I was really hurt by that because I try to be vulnerable. Like that's been a quality that I've always tried to live by. And so yeah, so I just I healed in the best that you can. Like I don't I also believe in not sharing like right when you're like I didn't get out the next day and be like, "Hey, I was in the hospital." I got medicine and went to therapy and
Right.
all the things. And then I started sharing I spoke locally, like I would just kind of speak at like engagements here, storytelling nights. And then I shared on Instagram and it kind of just took off.
Mm.
But the problem is, so I've shared about mental health for about 5 years now, but I was drinking during all of it. Um, yeah,
Oh.
I know. And so a month sober, so like March 3rd last year, I came out and said that I was an alcoholic. And I just felt like I owed it to my audience to be like, hey,
Yeah.
this is just who I am. And I wasn't hiding it on purpose. For a long time, when you're in active addiction, you're not even, it's hard to explain. You don't even know. I mean, you do know, but you know what I mean? It's just like you're in survival mode. Like you're hungover.
Exactly.
It's not like I was like trying to not tell people. Like I wasn't trying to hide something. I was just constantly in survival mode. So,
And I think that is also relatable to a lot of things. How many times have you left a relationship has ended and then you look back and you're like, "Oh, that was bad."
yeah.
And you just don't even
Yes.
you don't even realize when you're
Yeah.
in it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think the internet can be really hard on people who come out with something that they've processed,
Right.
but I think we have to respect the processing
Ah,
stage.
yeah.
We
So,
have to. You were
yeah.
still processing alcoholism and you shared when it made sense for you.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny you said that because the internet's a wild place.
Yeah.
I have gotten all kinds of responses. Like I got someone that said, "How dare you share it a month sober? Like you could relapse." And I was like, "Yeah, but you know what? I could also relapse at 10 years sober." You know what I mean? Like
True.
there's always that. Like there's no guarantee. I only again cheesy, but one day at a time. I really just have this moment. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
don't live in fear of relapse. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, I got that where people were like, "How could you share? You're only a month sober." But then I got the people saying, "Oh my God, you helped me realize like I have a problem. I need help."
Yeah.
So I always just tell people like, yeah, you have to like search and sit within because yeah, people are gonna have an opinion no matter what.
How do you handle negative feedback and negative comments slash there's obviously two types. There's like constructive criticism, but also trolls. Like, how do you handle that?
Yeah. I mean, it's tricky. I would say, like, luckily, because I don't have a huge following, 90% is good. Like, I'm blessed, like, right? So most people are super nice. But then there's people like that who, just have a different way of thinking or telling me that I shouldn't be sharing
Hmm.
so openly. And I've really tried, I try really, really hard to put the boundaries up, but like also be gracious. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
definitely have the feelings. I'm either not take it out, but like I started boxing. That really helped. So like, like just stuff like that.
Love.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right. I do too. And so like I try to process, I let myself feel the feeling of whatever it is, of like anger, shame, guilt, like whatever it is. I process it and then I'll talk to that person and then usually block them. Like if it, if it's if you can see, and I think you're probably aware of this, like you can tell very quickly if someone's reasonable or not. You know what I mean? Like if you can have a
Yeah.
conversation, and if I can't, then yeah, I just block them. And I think that's healthy.
That's
I'm
great.
not, yeah, I'm not here to have like debates. You know what I mean? Like about my personal life. Like if you have questions, that's different. But
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, they also don't have to be there. There are other parts of the internet where they can be.
I love that. Yeah,
Just
I know. Like it's really not that difficult. Like you can unfollow me. Like if you don't
yeah.
like the way I talk or what I'm sharing, like crazy concept.
Yeah, you could just go to another area of the internet.
Right.
Um, you shared with me a couple weeks ago that you received some pushback from family and your
Yeah.
sponsor
Yeah.
about sharing. Do you mind telling
Sure.
about that?
Yeah. So I just I posted like a picture of my 1 year on Facebook and then on Instagram, and Instagram's primarily like where I share it's like my professional page, but I share about sobriety on my personal Facebook page every once in a while. But like a year was a big monument or thing for me.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And so I did receive pushback from people in my life who said, that was kind of selfish, or maybe I shouldn't have done that, because you're supposed to get out of yourself in sobriety. Um, and the person said that like I hadn't given credit to God or whatever. I think because in my post I literally just said like 1 year sober. That was it. And I was like, was I supposed to tag God or something? I don't. Like, I don't.
At God.
Yeah, I'm being flippant, but like kind of
Yeah.
that's how I felt. So I that was like a big kind of like what we were talking about, like that wasn't a comment like online, but it was definitely a reflection of what someone else thought about what I'm doing.
Mhm.
And I won't lie, I cried like after that conversation. I was
Wow.
very, yeah, I think the tears, now that I process it, were anger, a lot of anger,
Mhm.
shame of like maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I am selfish. What am I doing? You know what I mean? And then I
Yeah.
also,
Yeah.
all the things. I felt gaslighted. I felt really gaslighted, like kind of like
Hmm.
questioning my not sanity, but like questioning my motives, like, are you selfish for sharing? Like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, and then I just took one look at my DMs, like to be honest, we're like, I don't get thousands, but I've gotten lots of messages over the past year, lots from people who are like, keep sharing, like we need to hear this, like you helped me get sober, or you helped me realize that I even have a problem, so it was like, that's pretty selfless to me actually. So
Yes, and if sharing comes naturally to you and it feels good to you, it's just
exactly.
it's a win-win-win-win-win.
Right, 100%. Yeah, and yeah, people aren't going to agree with your journey, right? Like no matter who you are, it's not even just like about sobriety thing. People aren't going to agree with what you've chosen for your life. For a lot of different things. And I'm like a recovering people pleaser. Like I've
Mm.
always been. I think that's like yeah, right? I think that's like a very like ingrained thing in females. That's like another topic, but I think,
Yeah.
we're just like taught to please, like keep the peace, like all the things. And now that I'm 32, I'm like, fuck that. Like,
Love.
yeah, I'm like, I'm
Love.
me. And if you're not on board with it, that's cool, right? Like, as long as I'm not like hurting you, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, obviously,
Yeah, yeah.
there's boundaries, but me sharing my picture and being happy about sobriety is pretty kick ass to me. And if you can't be happy about that, then maybe we need to reevaluate this friendship relationship. So
I love that. For folks just listening to the audio, when Christina brought up recovering people pleaser, I raised my hand and rolled my eyes so hard. It's just you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
So, how do you set boundaries though? Like when you're thinking about what do I share versus what do I
Mm,
not share? Do you have any rules for yourself about what's okay or when is okay?
yeah, such a good question. I do,
Mhm.
and that is a work in progress
Yeah.
always.
Yes.
But I would say like the first number one is like I share my story only, right? So I'm very, very big on like my husband's in recovery and like he's fine with me saying that, but like I don't share how, why, when that's his story. And if
Mhm.
he's cool with me sharing it someday, I will, but like he's fine with if I say that. So that's one.
Yeah.
Um, and then two, like, so I'm a childhood survivor of like abuse, right? I don't talk about
Mm.
who it was or what they did. There's no need. Like that's just right. Like you don't need to me, right? Because those people are still in my life. Like we have relationships and I want
Mhm.
to. We've healed them.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to talk about what happened. Like I'm not gonna deny it. Like it happened, you know.
Mhm.
It's a big part of my story, a big part of the alcoholism, like all the things. But it's
Mhm.
also not my place. I don't ever want to put someone's business out there, right? Because like we all make mistakes. We all do. And alcoholism has humbled me more than anything. And so life is messy and complicated. So I don't judge anyone. I mean, I try not to. So there's that. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
don't tell people's stories. And then I also try to come from a place of, I think I said it a little bit, but like not completely being healed, but like not in the gaping wound.
Yes. I can relate to that too. Yes, I love that. My second episode was or my third episode, I don't know. It was living with your partner during COVID.
Mm,
Which, a lot of the things I shared I had healed from because it was
sure.
like 6 months or so, but there was one thing that happened like a couple weeks prior and I told my brain I was like, I feel fine about it. I'm over it. And I shared it and there was just poison spewing from
Ooh,
my
yep,
mouth.
yep.
And so I have a new rule because of that at there needs to be at least 4 weeks
Yes,
post event
yes.
because I tried to convince myself that I was over it and I could totally share it in like a not judgy kind of way, but
Girl,
nope.
that's so good. So yeah, you helped me pull out another one is like, so I think you kind of touched on this, I think in your podcast last week or Monday, but um not sharing to like heal live, right? Like, because I think a lot of times like we get vulnerable. I'll speak for myself because I've certainly done it, but like
Yeah.
for a couple things to get attention because we're
Mhm.
feeling lonely, we may not even know why we're sharing. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
um, and something that helps me do this is really I'm big on intention setting. So I'll say like not every single picture because that's exhausting, but like but you get it. You know, like what is my intention for this post? What is my intention? Is it and then checking in with myself like do I need to talk to my therapist about this, you know, or do
Mm.
I need to heal from this? Am I still angry about this? You know what I mean? So it's like that's a huge one. Yeah, is like cuz we can definitely be doing that to like seek attention or heal something and doing that on a platform is just not the way to go. And it's funny Brene talks about that. She'll talk about like vulnerability, you know, like what it is and what it's not.
Yeah, there are a lot of there's oversharing.
Yes,
Um
exactly.
I'm
Yeah.
not yeah, I've grabbed coffee with a girl before who just laid it all on me and I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh my god, I just
Like,
met you 5 minutes ago." But
sure.
and then there's also Brene calls it the smash and grab
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
where people kind of use it
Yep.
to throw you off guard
Yeah. Right.
and to kind of wield power over
Yeah.
someone.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. For sure. For
So
sure.
there are definitely boundaries. Those are cool rules. Do you have any other guidelines for yourself?
Yeah, another big one I thought of is like I'm very big on like trying not to trigger people. So like I don't like talk about like when I have dealt with suicidal ideation. I usually try to say
Mm,
like trigger warning suicidal ideation. I don't talk about like methods, specific thoughts. abuse. Don't get into the weeds of like what the abuse was. Like on a side note, please don't ask people how they were abused. Like just that's not a cool question. Like just very trigger. It's happened to me. So I'm like, I just very much so leave it not general, but and then also I'm a storyteller by heart and I love this stuff. It's like if you're gonna take someone on a journey, right? Like you can start at the low point, but also leave them at a place of like hope. Have you ever met
Mm,
someone or listened to
mm.
someone who like tells you their war story and then they get to the end and there's no like not wrap up, but you're like, oh my God, like I feel
You're
drained.
like, shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
Yeah,
there's a
yeah.
fine line and like dance to walk. Cause look, I am not 100% healed. I'm still in therapy. Like I still get help, but I can also tell you the war story and like, and give you hope at the end. Does that make sense? Instead of
Yes.
saying like, I'm healed, I'm great. Cause that's not true either. But I'm also not going to you don't want to leave your audience with like, well, shit, now I just feel worse. You know what I mean? So,
And I think that goes a lot into your intention, because your intention is not, I'm going to vent and have a pity party for
yes,
myself. Your
yes.
intention is to help.
Exactly, provide hope. I have like, and it's like I love this stuff. I could talk about Instagram social media strategy all day, but I have those three pillars of like what I'm trying to do. I'm like providing hope, educating, and ending stigma. And if it doesn't fall in those three boxes, then maybe I shouldn't post it unless it's a picture of my cats.
Yeah,
But
totally.
anyway, but
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like
Yes.
if it's not falling into those three buckets and it's not something that I like am I like venting, and I've certainly done it. Like I'm not perfect, of course. I've
Yeah.
posted things, I've shared things more so about my husband that he's like checked me on like, hey, that's not your story to tell. Like I don't live like you do, right? Like
Right.
I don't want to live my life like that, and that's fine. I totally get it. A lot of people don't,
Yeah.
you know I've chosen this life, and he's like, I haven't, so anyway, yeah yeah.
So, you mentioned too that after your conversation with getting pushback on sharing, that you had like self doubt.
Mhm.
Do you still go through like periods of self doubt, and if so, how do you have like a toolkit, or like do you have like what do you do?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I still do. I wouldn't say daily, but like especially because that just happened, so I don't know. I'm still working through that for sure.
Mm,
Um, yeah, I mean, I of course I'll post and I'll be like, what am I even doing? Like, should I be doing this? Is this a job? Why am I sharing? I'm selfish, right? So like all
yeah.
of those thoughts definitely come. But then I also like go back to that pillar of what I was talking about, those three things of like my why. So I think if you have like a very
Mhm.
defined like why and what you're doing, right? Like and why you're doing it, that foundation helps me come back to the root of exactly what I'm doing, right? Like I'm not selfish. I know I'm
Mm,
not. Like these are like very real things, you know what I mean? So yeah, it's but it takes a lot of work and a lot of like self-reflection too. You know what I mean? Like but it's I think it's a daily process for sure.
mm. I completely resonate with that.
Yeah.
um, what what is your goal slash dream for your work?
I love this question. I've
Dream
never
big, girl.
Yeah, I know, I love it. So I think ideally when COVID's over, which it will be, I
Mhm.
want to speak. I am a strange person in the sense that I love speaking. Like I'm a natural speaker. Like I don't get, I mean, I get nervous, but I like light up on stage. I just love it. Right. So
Yep.
that for sure, I felt called to do that for a long time. I just never knew what it looked like. And it's cool because I'm falling into it. So speaking,
Yeah.
writing, and then I am in the process of I'm taking the GRE to become a therapist. So I want to have my own,
Wow.
yeah, to be I don't know if I'll do addiction yet. I'm still early in recovery, so it's like walking that line, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna be a therapist.
Wow. That's lovely. That is
Thank you.
lovely. Christina, how can we find you?
Yeah, so Instagram's my primary outlet. So it's just C Kimbrough 1. And then my website's just easy. It's Christina, my first name, Kimbrough.com.
That's lovely. Is there anything else? Are there any cool projects you want to plug? Any cool stuff?
I'm trying to think. I don't really have any specific. I do have a giveaway coming up, which I'm excited about. I'm an ambassador.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm an ambassador for this really cool. This is cool. I'll plug them. It's called Still I Run, and they are like fitness and running and mental health, which is super cool because those are the three things I love
Oh.
talking to. Things I know. So if you want to check them out, they're at Still I Run, and they just are about like the benefits of running, like and mental health, right? And ending the stigma. So anyway, I'm partnering with them to give away some of their really cute like sweatshirts and workout clothes. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, other than
Yay.
that, yeah, thank you. Other than that,
Oh,
just kind of check me out on Instagram. I love hanging out with people over there. So
you're doing the Lord's work. And for
oh,
people who haven't had a chance to check out Christina's Instagram, you very much have a Glennon Doyle type of vibe, and
thank you.
you know plenty about Brene. So like that type of beautiful environment on the internet. Check out
Thank you.
Christina.
Thank you so much.
Yay. Thank you so much for coming on the
Yeah,
show. I'm so happy to have you.
fun for me. So I'm privileged to be here.